Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Let's Do It Afraid podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about fear-based parenting and how we are trying to steer away from it a little bit and not kind of repeat the same cycles that maybe are things that our parents taught us. We did talk about this a little bit in our episode with Mayra Hernandez, which is great. She talked a lot about this. So we did think it might be worthy to have a whole segment on it and kind of go a little bit deeper into the topic.
Yes, I'm excited. Until we started talking about it, I'm like, I haven't really examined the way I was brought up and the way that I'm bringing up my kids. I just go, 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 and I just realized that I've just never really like thought about how I apply. I just do what is best for my kids and what's best for us at the moment. But I'm like, I never really compared to how I grew up. I just know I want better for them, and that's what I'm doing. But then at the same time, when I get to certain stages or certain scenarios, and I'm like, oh my God, this really back to my childhood. And that's where I analyze it, but then it's like a quick and then move on.
Mhm.
So now that we were talking about it and when Myra brought it up, I was like, oh, this is an interesting topic. Like I never really thought about it. And the way that I respond sometimes, I'm like, oh my God, that's my mom. That's how she did it to me. And so then I pass it on and then I'm like checking myself sometimes, like, what was it looking at? Like when I was looking at the agenda today about the things that we were going to cover, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I've been doing that or like it's just automatic. Like I have the button and I need to switch it. So it's good to look at because now I need to analyze and we can rewrite our stories for a better future.
Yeah, I was listening to this other podcast. It's like a parenting one, and they were saying how, sometimes it's kind of hard to rewrite your story because if you don't know different, you kind of tend to do the same things you were taught. So it's kind of like that. When you know better, you do better, right? So if you've been parenting a certain way, it might be because that's how you were parented. Is that even a word,
Yeah.
parented?
Yeah. It makes sense to me.
Yeah. When we were talking about it with my dad, she said something that really kind of hit home when she said how when you're in fear, you're kind of like in that fight or flight mode and you can't think with your, I don't remember what she called it, but
Amygdala.
yeah, like saying, I don't know if it was she saying you couldn't think with that area or you were only thinking with that area, but I think she said it was like you can't develop a certain part of your brain. So, you're kind of in this dysregulated area, whereas like a child, for example, if you're like, stop, get out, get out of there, don't do that. Like they're like, oh, like they don't even like really know what they did because they're just like, oh my gosh. But if be and what that could kind of cause is for them to not know how to do things differently because they're not thinking, you're not processing things, you're not really thinking about different strategies or different ways that you could do something. So kind of instilling that fear is probably not the healthiest thing to do, only because I don't think it causes them to be to kind of be able to think about different scenarios or what they could have done differently, because in that moment they're not really thinking, they're just trying to survive.
Yeah, it's interesting now that you say that because I'm like in the middle of when I'm working and they need something, I'm like, give me a moment, and then they come back and I'm like, hold on 1 second, and then I'm like, I'm like, okay, hold on, what? Hold on, for real, 1 second. But then I like forget because I'm like in the middle of trying to finish something, and then I'm like, just give me a second, or I'm editing, and I'm like, guys, I can't hear the editing, and I can't like while you guys are talking, I can't like. I put in my headphones, but they're still louder. I'm like,
Hmm.
you guys like lower your voices sometimes, but then I'm like, oh my God, guys, I can't hear. And then I'm like, oh my God. I check myself real quick and I'm like, I'm sorry. But
Yeah.
I'm like, now that you're saying that, I'm like, oh God, I'm like traumatizing my kids. So sorry.
No, I mean, and when we, like I said, when we know better, we do better, right? So there's
Yeah.
a learning experience. And I mean, I hope my husband doesn't like kill me for saying this, but when we went to therapy, I know I'm like airing out his dirty laundry. We were kind of discussing with a therapist how he tends to be very reactive, right? So he doesn't like, he might say something or he might yell something and he's not fully like processing what he's saying. And my husband, when he was younger, suffered a lot of physical and emotional abuse by his father. And so what the therapist was saying, that his frontal lobe didn't fully develop, which is the area of our brain that allows us to make conscious decisions, right? To kind of weigh the pros and the cons of things, to maybe think before we act, things like that. So, that part of his brain wasn't developed because he was in this constant state of fear, of fight or flight. So, one of the things that she kind of talked about was that, you can, if you're conscious about it and you know what's going on, like, okay, yes, this happened to me. He does have a choice moving forward, if that's something that he wants to work on, right? So, I mean, of course, she gave us like different tools and things that he could work on. But yeah, so that also got me thinking, like, wow, it's true. When we're constantly in the state of fear, we don't always make the best decisions because we don't have the capability to make those decisions.
Yeah. So when she said that, I was like, oh my God, it makes so much sense how you know how I was saying, like, sometimes when I'm doing things or I'm super stressed out, I'm like, wait, I start questioning things, right? And I'm like, it's because my brain is not, like the amygdala is overwhelmed and it's like just trying to keep you alive, as you said.
Yeah.
So you're like, you lose your effort to analyze. And I'm a very analytical, logical person. So it like frustrates the heck out of me. So I'm like, okay, I'm broken. Like, I don't know what to do at this point. Like, am I the wrong person? Like, am I doing it wrong? What's going on here? But it makes so much sense now because your brain's just not going to go further than that. It's like putting a barrier so that you protect your body. So it's pretty interesting.
Exactly. I mean, it was technically designed to keep us safe, right? So
Yeah.
it's not something that we should necessarily not or like want to get rid of because it's obviously serves a purpose when we are in danger, but maybe it's not the best thing to constantly be in that area, right? So we want to find a way to kind of regulate ourselves because I think kids learn more by what they see than by what we tell them, right? So if
Yeah.
I'm like telling my son, don't get mad, but I'm yelling at him as I'm telling him, don't get
Yeah.
mad.
Yeah.
Like that's probably I'm doing him a disservice, right? I need to find a way to kind of calm myself down and regulate myself and then, be able to discipline him accordingly.
Yeah, and then she also talked about how you can get so stuck in it, right? And she's like, "Oh, you have a choice. Like you have a choice and you have to figure out how to get out of there." And I feel like sometimes I get so overwhelmed because I just have anxiety on a daily basis sometimes that it just, okay, well, what time is it going to come and run me over? Or what's next? What like you're just anticipating things or I'm just reading rooms and reading spaces. I'm like, "Can I just come in and just calm down? Like there's no need for this." But I tell myself this and then I'm like still doing it and I'm like, I need to break this pattern because it's not okay. And I'm just living in that, I'm in
Mhm.
that fear, I'm in that state. Like I need to move beyond.
Yeah, especially because I read another book about parenting as well. I know I read, I love reading books. I don't know if I'm learning anything from it, but I'm trying,
You're
right?
helping me.
Yeah. And, they were saying how sometimes kids are more impacted by, their caregiver, like their mom or their dad, versus the outside world. So even if their outside world is chaotic and, there's dangers of other kinds, as long as they're like caretaker, their mom or their dad is somebody who is calm, who's self-regulated, like they will be able to be calm and self-regulated too because they're more impacted by the person that they associate with on a daily basis than the world around them.
Yeah.
So that also makes me want to continue to work on myself because I don't want to pass that on to my kids because I mean I'm the same way. I can be very reactive and you know my son triggers me a little bit more than my daughter just because she's older, right? So it's
Yeah.
like I feel like he's testing me more.
Yeah.
And, so he'll do crazy things and be jumping on the walls and I'm like, stop jumping, and
Yeah.
I'm my immediate reaction is to yell. But same, I'm trying to work on like, okay, like whatever I tell him, right? When he's angry, I tell him, go punch a pillow, go, yell in your room, punch the couch or go run around outside, breathe, use the breathing tool that they teach you in school. So
Yeah.
it's like
Hmm.
I need to remember those things for myself too when I start to feel triggered or upset.
Yeah. It's just, I feel like I know I say this all the time, but the life here is so like you just have this extra societal pressure environment where it's just like you're working all the time and you always have to do all this stuff and there's this to-do list and there's just like no sit down time for nothing. I need to start carving out in my day like this is time to unwind. This is time to sit down. This is me time. Not all together, right? But like carve it into my month at least, or somehow make space because I think that all piles up where it's just like we're so ran out by the time it's like for me, it's 4 or 5 p.m. I'm dead. Like I'm my dead battery. I tell my kids, I'm like, I need to go take a nap. And so I do and I don't sometimes because I'm like, if I have something to finish, I've been working on some QuickBooks training programs, and I'm like, if I'm almost there, like I want to finish this. But then, I sit down and I'm like, well, I'll try to take a nap. Even if it's just laying down, it helps me just come back and get some rest, even if I'm not fully sleeping. But then of course, I want to sleep, right? But then my brain's like, I have all this stuff to do, and I shouldn't be sleeping, and I should be doing this, and it just doesn't stop talking. So I need to start doing that 5 4 3 2 1 that she was talking about. So, like, I'm gonna try that when I'm trying to take a nap, and hopefully I fall asleep. Because if it's not that, then I start praying, and then I can put myself to sleep, but it's not 20 minutes. It'll take me longer.
Yeah. Yeah, that 5 4 3 2 1 that helps me a lot when I'm anxious. So it's like when all these crazy thoughts are coming into my mind, that always helps calm me down. So yeah, try it. Let us know if that helps you as well. So we want to define fear-based parenting, which is parenting motivated by fear of failure, judgment, or control. So it's usually, you're trying to control the situation, maybe like you're trying to control their environment.
That's really, I mean, you hit the spot with that, and it's really hard. Like for me, I feel like I was always protecting them no matter what, just because my oldest always had therapies and speech problems. Like nobody would really understand him besides me or my family or the teachers that like knew him after a certain period. Like sometimes at the beginning of the year, they wouldn't understand what he was saying. So it's really hard because I'm like, how do I get him to convey what he's saying? Because also he didn't like we tried a picture book or something like that where you would point to what you want to do if he could
Yes.
really understand what you're saying. He didn't care for that. He was just like putting it in the wrong direction. I mean, at school they had a calendar and they had like the picture of your house, they had a picture of your food. Like schedule wise, he was really good at. So he really understood. He just didn't know how to convey it. He would say it, but people wouldn't understand what he was saying because he was also bilingual. So he would say some words in Spanish and some words in English, and I'd be like, "What did you say?" So it helped when there was bilingual assistants in the classroom because then they would understand. But when there wasn't, it was really hard for him. So my natural instinct was always to help him have a better future, a better environment, somewhere where he felt accepted and somewhere where he felt welcome. So I'm like, how do I make him have some independence, but also make sure he's okay and he's not being bullied because at the
Yeah.
same time, he's very vulnerable. I gave him independence. I want him in mainstream. I want him around other kids and things like that. And he's really good about navigating those different scenarios because we've always had it since he was little. Whereas my second son, he's really good, but he could be shy depending on the nature of the environment. But my first, he don't care. He'll talk to you like even if you don't understand him. Like that's one thing about him. If he never loses hope, he's always trying. Like I'm just like I got so lucky, honestly, because with everything that he's gone through, I would have gave up. Like so many barriers, and he just kept going. And I've always been that kind of person until anxiety came into my life because then
Mhm.
I'm like judging my room. I'm judged like everything's out of my control, I feel like. And so then I start going into all my fears and I'm like, God, can I just become the person I was before? Like I just don't know how to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like what you were saying kind of reminds me of like what they call it, the helicopter parent, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Where you're just like trying to keep them safe. And yeah, that's definitely a big one when it comes to with the whole topic of fear-based parenting. They talk a lot about that, like being the helicopter parent. But I also think it's hard and it's something that I honestly don't know how to navigate. And I wish that there was, I don't know, maybe we can hopefully one day we'll have like this parenting expert and they can give us all the advice. But it's kind of like, well, what do you do when, for example, one of the parents is more lenient or more open to, I don't know, give them a little bit more freedom, but then the other parent is like, no, and wants to keep them, very close. And so it's like, but what do you do? Because it's like that's your partner, you don't want to fight with them on everything and anything. You kind of have to be on the same team, right? Isn't that what we're always taught? Like as the parents, we have to be on the same team. But it's just hard when one of them is a little bit more strict than the other, because I think of like my daughter who's older and obviously the rules with her are very different than with my son who's only 8. But I mean, I can be a helicopter when it comes to a lot of things, but then at the same time, for example, if she wants to go, to the mall with her friends or something like that, I'll be a little bit more open, whereas like my husband, she'll have to beg him and beg him, beg him. And my daughter has told us, that it does cause her a lot of anxiety because she's like, just thinking that she has to ask us for permission causes her a lot of anxiety because she's already anticipating the response. So me preocupa, like
It's so hard because
yeah,
also like I remember how my mom was with me, but again, I'm the only girl within the household, four boys and me, right? So like everybody was always protecting me, and I'm thankful for it because thanks to that I was always concentrated in school and I like school, so I found that outlet to like focus on, and I always made them proud. But then also like that's making me look for external validation at points, and now that I'm seeing that, I'm like, yeah, I should have never really cared. Like I should have just done whatever I wanted, but. I mean, when I was a kid, I'm glad I did well, right? But then now that I'm an adult, I'm like, I should be able to do what I want. Like, I don't need anybody's permission, how Myra was saying, like, we're looking for
Mhm.
external validation. I'm like, no. I mean, they pushed me to do good and they didn't know any better. They wanted me to do the best because they didn't have the opportunity. Like, my parents didn't have the opportunity to go to school. And my mom wished she would have went to school. Like, she's really good at math and things of that nature, but she just didn't get the opportunity, you know? And so
Yeah.
they're like, do whatever you can to get as far as you can because like we didn't have that opportunity. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, well, that's what I did. But I also don't want to instill that expectation because it gets crazy because also it's really hard, honestly. Like my brothers really wanted me to finish my career before I got married, and then I was like, dude, I was 21. Like I was still going to school. It didn't stop me from going to school. Like I still got married, I had kids, I continued school, I finished school, had my second kid when I finished Sonoma State. So it's like I still did what I needed to do. Like, you know what I mean? Like I still
Mhm.
got what I needed to do, and my career was built. Everything was, I mean, everything is good, thank God. But at the same time, like when are we right and when are we wrong and when are our parents wrong? And it's just I guess everybody's lifestyle or everybody's preference comes to when they have their own family and then they do their own priorities and values at the end of the day. But at the same time, it's really hard, like doing the independence and, having somebody be a good person and there was a bad person. And I'm like, I feel like sometimes I'm the more disciplined person because my husband's like really lenient. Like if they want to do something, he'll be like, okay, just so that they would be happy for the moment. I'm like, dude, you can't win them over just giving them whatever they want. Like
Yeah.
spend more time with them, do this with them. And he does. But I'm like, this is where we have to think of how our parents did it and how we do it. Because honestly, my mom was always working.
Yeah.
My dad was always working too. Like my dad would work afternoon shifts to help my mom in the morning. And then he worked all the time. So I never really saw him. And then my mom also worked like double shifts. So
Hmm.
I'm like, I don't know how we did it. Thank God I had brothers because they always helped me and no me hizo falta nada. And
Yeah.
I didn't feel any kind of, what's it called? Like a hole or anything. Like
Yeah.
on the weekends, they had time when they got home. They would make sure, like I was telling you, there was times my dad would get home like 11, 12, and I would wake up, put an alarm to go out and ride a bike with him at midnight. So I would spend time with him. That's something that I'm always going to remember.
Yeah. I think I just get worried because I know that my mom was very strict with me as well. And now as an adult, I am very thankful for certain things. She kept me safe, instilled good values in me. But at the same time, I do think that that did still instill a lot of anxiety and fear in me. And the same thing, like constantly feeling like I have to ask for permission or I can't just ask for the things that I want or need. So that's why it worries me for like my daughter. But I told her everything that we talked about on the podcast yesterday. And I was just telling her, like, I promise you, it gets better. Like, this isn't going to be your life forever. You will get to a point where you don't need to ask anyone for permission. You can do whatever you want. But we hope that we've instilled, a sense of the values and the morals so that you can make good decisions, even though I've told her you're going to make bad decisions and that's okay. Like just learn and grow. But it does, I don't know, like I always tell my therapist, I just don't want my kids to end up like me.
Yeah, I feel like also it's part of life. Oh, that's another thing that I was gonna say. Sorry. When we were talking about the amygdala, like we're
Hmm.
trying to run away from our fear. When I first got anxiety, I was trying to just like push it out. Like I'm like, I don't want to feel that ever again.
Yeah.
It's an emotion though. It's a feeling. Like it's valid. We're humans. We're meant to feel things. And
Hmm.
sometimes we would forget about that. And I was so worried about not having to feel that ever in my life because I was so scared it would drive me into a panic attack again. And I never
Hmm.
wanted to feel that. So I was like, now I don't know if I'm dying or this is gonna happen every day or what, but I really want to do whatever it takes to not have that feeling. So at all costs, if I saw something worried me, I was like, nope, we're not talking about this today. Like I'm not worrying about this today. And so I kept putting it in the back burner, and then later it turned into a panic attack too. And I was like, oh my God, like so then I realized like I have to sit there and think through my feelings, feel what I need to feel, and then move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. And I think that that's like the best thing that you could teach your kids again, how to, by you regulating yourself and kind of modeling that for them, then when they have those same feelings and anxieties, they'll know what to do, right? Because
Yeah.
they saw you do them as well. And even like little things, for example, if you're teaching your kids to be afraid of things like getting their driver's license, right? Like I remember when my daughter first even kind of thought about getting her driver's license, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared, like, and I remember, I think I even told her, like, are you sure? But then once she was like, yeah, mom, I'm sure, I'm like, okay, like, let's do this. We could do this, you're gonna be fine. But, like, if we're constantly like, oh, well, there's too much traffic, it's too scary, like then they're going to start repeating those things, right? Like, oh yeah, my mom has a point, like there's too much traffic, it's scary. And so we're kind of holding them back from, kind of being independent and also
More freedom?
self-confident. No,
Oh,
more self-confident. Sorry. Yeah. Like, can you imagine, you're 16 and, you know, my daughter got her license. She's 17, sorry. She got her license and she's like super confident, right? She's like, Mom, she always tells me, Mom, I'm a good driver. I want to drive. I never hear her say that she thinks she's a bad driver. Like, no, she's always like, I'm a good driver. So you want to instill that confidence in them. But at the same time, they have to know that they do have to be safe on the road. It is a scary world. So it's like finding a balance, right? And
yeah.
how much to
Yeah.
share with them.
Giving them the tools that they need to be able to succeed by themselves, I think is great. I think it just depends on their capabilities too, because again, my oldest doesn't have the same capabilities as my second, and so it's like I was also talking about how they're gonna get like what is it, sex ed in that class. Well, my oldest is in fifth grade now, and I'm like, oh my God, what the heck happened? I held him back a year, so he should be in sixth grade, but like his mentality, I think, is at a second or third grade level student. So I'm like, I don't know if this is a good move, a bad move. Like, I don't know if this is an adequate move for him because he's still, in my head, he's still young. Like he's gonna be the same kind of mentality as my middle because my middle is in second, but he's advanced. So like he's much more mature. And so I'm like, they're about the same. I'm like, I can't imagine my second one talking about this stuff. So I'm like, maybe I'm gonna keep him out an additional year. But then I'm like, what if the other kids talk to him about it? Like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah. That's a really good point because yeah, you might not think he's ready, but you can't kind of predict the conversations that the other kids are going to have around them. Although I think it's sixth grade you said or fifth grade?
He's in fifth grade.
Fifth grade. I think it's more of like, your body parts and things like that.
Yeah, but okay, so little TMI, but he's
And I think
going
they
through
separate them,
changes.
right? They separate the girls and the boys.
I don't know. I don't know how
Oh.
it works. But when I was in class, like when I was in school, I think it was in middle school that we talked about it, and everybody was in the same classroom. Like same sex, everybody was learning about both genders and how to do different things and how to protect yourself and things of that nature. And I'm like, my kid is way too young for this. Like, he doesn't even understand what's going on with his body, and he's going through changes right now where he was like, like he thought it was something cool. He was talking about it with like my mom, and then he like started wanting to talk about it at a party. I'm like, honey, this is private. You don't talk about this stuff. And so I'm like, he's really innocent, so he has no idea. And I'm like, if he gets this class taught and then he goes to a party, he's gonna want to talk about this. I'm like, and we're not talking about this. So I was telling
Well,
my mom, I'm like, I think I'm gonna hold him back another year
uh,
until he really understands. Like,
or maybe email the teacher and kind
yeah,
of like really understand what the curriculum is and what they're going to be teaching them.
yeah.
Because I do remember in like middle school we had, a different kind of sex ed
Mhm.
with a different conversations. But in elementary school, I can't remember so much for myself, but when my daughter did it, I do remember they separated them and it was more of like for girls it was, about their body parts and their periods and things like that. And then for boys it's, the issues that they deal with. Um, so yeah, it might not be as bad as you think, but I would email the teacher and kind
I'm
of,
gonna email because I
yeah.
need to know. I was telling my mom, like, he's not ready for any of this, honestly. I was freaking out and I was like, I don't know what the best decision is. And then if I tell my husband, like, I told him and he just laughed. And I'm like, okay, you're not thinking this through as I am. And then here I go with helicopter mom, right? So I'm like, I'm not trying to not have him learn it, but I just think it's not the adequate time because his brain is not as developed, and I don't think he's ready for it. But we'll see what they say. If it's just gonna talk about your body and how it changes, I think it's fine. But
Yeah.
if it goes beyond that, like he really doesn't need to know how to use things right now. Like I'm like, yeah, he's gonna think he has superpowers and super knowledge. So let's not do this.
Yeah, no, definitely email the teacher and see what she tells you because it might not be as bad as you are thinking that it's going to be, but it's hard. I mean, being a parent is really hard and we don't have a manual for it. I wish we did. But I also think about when I was growing up and my mom never really talked to us about sex. It was never something that she really talked to us about other than don't do it. So and for me, it was more like, oh, if you do it, they're just, they're going to use you and then they're going to leave you. And, no más quieren una cosa de ti, right? So I just remember hearing that and it did I was afraid. I was very afraid to have sex because I was afraid of getting pregnant. I swore that they were going to have sex with me and then leave me. Like they were never going to take me seriously. But I think it caused a lot of insecurities in me because then it's like, well, is that the only thing that I'm worth? Is the only thing that matters about me what's in between my legs and whether I'm a virgin or not? Is that the only thing that matters? Um, and also it caused me to really not trust guys, right? Thinking they're all gonna cheat on me or they're all gonna just have sex with me and leave me. That was another thing that I was scared of. And so, when I started dating my husband, I was so jealous of dumb things and not necessarily because he did anything wrong. It's just because of what I believed that guys were like. So I definitely don't, I mean, yeah, I have obviously my daughter is 17, so I do have conversations with her about sex and things like that appropriate to her age. But I never tell her like, oh, they're just gonna have sex with you and leave you because I never want her to think that that's the only value that she has.
Yeah.
She matters. She's a human. She is important. She's the most important person, to us. And yes, she has to take care of herself and be safe, but also know that she can trust people, if they prove that they are trustworthy.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like my mom, now that I think about it, I don't think we ever talked about like the intimacy or whatever. I just went to class and they signed off on it and that's where I learned. But I don't know that I've ever had conversations. I think it was like very private because of I don't know if it's religion or like that's just how it
Culture.
was. Because my
Mhm.
grandma, I don't think my grandma was really involved with her either. So I think she just didn't have that background or she just didn't have the experience. And I don't judge the way they parented me either because that's the best they could do.
Mhm.
And so I think we all live in different times and we do our best. So
Yeah.
no judgment here. So I feel like when she told me, when I talked to her about the subject, she's like, maybe it's time for you to talk to him about that. And I'm like, what? I'm like, no, there's no way I'm talking to him about this right now. I was like, he was so like thinking he had superpowers because his body was changing. I'm like, no, this is not the topic on the table right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to kind of go about, the conversations that I have with my son are very different than what I would have with my daughter, right? So with my
yeah,
son, it's more of like good touch, bad touch. This is a good touch, this is a bad touch. Nobody's allowed to touch your body, not even me, unless you give me permission. And even when I took him to the doctor recently, sorry, when I took him to the doctor recently to get a physical, just, a regular physical. Even the doctor told him, like, I'm only, touching you right now because your mom's here. She said it was okay. And I just want to make sure that you're healthy. So, I kind of like that because you're kind of teaching them that they have power and control over their body.
yeah.
But yeah, so obviously like the conversations are very different. But yeah, I don't know if I would be ready to have the full-on talk with him in fifth grade. Yeah.
Exactly. That's where I was like, my mind just went to that. So I do need to ask the teacher what's going to be about and like what topic they're going to discuss because I was freaking out. I was like, there's no way. And I'm like, if I tell my husband, he's going to be like, well, go for it. Like, I don't know. I'm the
Yeah.
one that usually calls the shots on those type of things. I'm just like, he lets me do whatever. It's
He
just,
trusts
he lets
you.
me do whatever I want to do with him.
Yeah, he trusts you. I've asked my husband, like, hey, so when should we have the talk with my son?
Mhm.
Like because I'm not a boy and he's a boy. So I asked him like, when do you think we should start having, the talk with him? And he's like, I think he said like, I don't know, like 13. And I'm like, oh. I feel like 13's too
Well,
late, maybe,
yeah.
but then, so it's like, I don't know. But then 10 is too young. So I don't know, like, what is the appropriate age, right?
Yeah, that's something that I was thinking about too because like my middle son is what gonna be 8, and I'm like, yeah, that's too early. But I think it just depends because I mean every kid is different. Like I'm telling you, my middle kid is very mature. My oldest kid is a little bit laid back and he's a little bit delayed. So it just depends.
Yeah. There was some strategies that we did read about that we wanted to share, which was recognizing the fear triggers, practicing connection over control, and embracing imperfection and growth for both, the parents and the children. Um, and I think that I like the practicing connection over control because, when I don't know, like when you're trying to control everything, you kind of don't allow them to make their own mistakes. And if you think about it, the best way to learn is by our mistakes, right?
Yeah.
So more so than telling them like, don't do this, just let them know like, hey, even when you mess up, I'm gonna be here. You
Yeah.
know,
Hmm.
if my daughter, if you get into a car accident, call me. I'll be there in 5 minutes. And I've even told her, like, for example, if you are at a party and you were drinking and you're underage, hopefully she'll never do that. But if she does,
Yeah.
I always tell her, call me. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Yeah, I might yell at you. Maybe, probably I'm going to yell at you. I'm going to be upset with you, but you're going to be safe. Whereas if you are in that position and you decide to drive or get into a car with somebody else who's been drinking or walk home or something just so you don't get caught, you're putting yourself in danger, like real danger. You could get into a car accident and die. So I rather you get yelled at for a little bit and then we're going to be fine. So just letting them know that they're going to mess up, they're going to make mistakes, they're going to get roughed around a little bit, maybe have a few bruises here and there, but ultimately, we're your safe place. We're going to have a strong connection. We're going to form this strong bond so that I'm always your safe place when and if you need me. So that way they're not so afraid, to make mistakes or afraid to grow and learn. I think that that's really important.
Yeah, I agree. And then I do know that the fear-based parenting can cause anxiety, self-doubt, and perfectionism within the kids. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, my kid has perfectionism. So I'm like, is that part of trauma? I'm like, I hope it's not. He's just really good at what he does. Like when he's drawing, he can draw like Sonic and whatever his favorite characters are. If he watches them on YouTube, he'll like be able to sketch them out. I'm like, dude, I wish I had that talent. And a couple of my brothers do. But I'm like, I don't know. Is that trauma-based? Is that an inherited trait? What is this?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm a perfectionist too in a lot of ways, and I think you probably are as
I
well.
am
And
too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's kind of hard to know where exactly we learned that from or, where we got it from. But I mean, I'm sure, yeah, we're all going to be traumatized by something and we're going to traumatize our children as well. I've accepted it. I've learned
Yeah.
to
I'm like
them
thinking, I'm
be
like, oh my God,
traumatized.
I'm a horrible parent. And they're like, no, you're acknowledging what you're doing and you're gonna change it and you're thinking about the future. So your intent is not like there's no ill intention. I think we
Yeah.
just naturally do things without thinking about what's going on and what consequences are gonna be.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, my therapist said that to me one time. She's like, Myra, there's parents who don't even care. Like they're not even having these thoughts. They're not even having these conversations. Like the fact that you care, like that says that you're a good parent. The fact that you're asking these questions and that you want to do better because we're all going to mess up and we're not going to do things perfectly. And like I said, we are going to traumatize our kids. They're going to have to go to therapy. It's just part of life. But at least, maybe we'll do like minimal damage.
Hopefully, yeah, because also the pressure and the guilt and disconnect that we can also feel as parents when that happens is something that can also be detrimental to ourselves. But at the same time, like I can't, like I was telling you yesterday, the mom guilt in me is just
Yeah.
bad sometimes.
Yeah. No, I understand. I have a lot of guilt too. I think more with both of my kids, but sometimes I feel it more with my daughter because she's the first. So that's kind of where I learned a lot of things. And I was younger and I was more impatient and things like that. I kind of I was a helicopter parent for the majority of her growing up, like the younger years, and also I think I was just like very attached to her because I was so, I don't know, like in this weird headspace of like depression and a lot of things going on. So I think I just like held on to her so tightly and I kind of wanted to keep her so close to me that now she kind of has like a little bit of separation anxiety and I know that I caused that, you know?
Yeah, with my youngest, I don't know. I don't know if it's the stigma that I've always had, like daughters versus boys. Like you have to protect the girls more than you do the boys. But honestly, we all know we have to protect both of them.
Mhm.
There are dangers out there. So
Mhm.
for me, it's like after having her, she was born in COVID time. So then I was like always home with her, working from home, doing things with her. And so when she went to school, it was like the hardest time for me because with the boys, like I was working, I was doing other stuff. Like I had no option but to do it because had to go to school with my first and he had to go to daycare. With my second, I was already working in my career and I had no other option but to leave him. And I was working 12-hour days. And that's where I knew that life was not for me because I was not able to mom. And for me, momming fills my cup. That is my calling. And I've always had that natural instinct to be drawn towards the kids because when I was
Mhm.
little, you would always find me where the kids were.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think, I mean, like I said, the fact that you are recognizing it and thinking about those things, I think that that makes you a great mom and our kids are going to be fine.
Thank you. I know. Yes, they are. And I mean, your kids have the best mom there too. So, I mean, I think we're all just trying to do our best. And that's just part of the struggle and part of momming because a lot of people don't talk about it, but it's part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think our kids at the end of the day know that how much we love them and that we're rooting for them and that no matter what happens, like we got their back, you know?
Correct.
So, and I think that that's the most important thing. A kid needs to know that they're safe, that they're loved, and that no matter what, they're always going to be loved. There's nothing that they can do that would make us not love them. And I think that gives them a sense of safety and security to go out into the world and just know that no matter what, they're going to be okay because, their mom and their dad's got them.
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway too with the whole fear-based parenting is just to know that the more that we can regulate ourselves and try to stay calm ourselves, the less anxiety that we kind of project onto them, because I think that they can feel it, right? When mom or dad are upset or scared or angry, even if we don't say anything, I think they can sense it. So just being able to regulate ourselves and calm ourselves down, I think that it's going to make a huge difference in their lives. So that's something that I'm going to be working on moving forward.
Yeah. It's
Is
really hard. I mean, it's easier said than done sometimes.
yeah.
Like I pick them up and then they're just chatter, chatter, chatter. And I'm like, guys, hold on. Like, let me soak this in. I was just in quiet mode before you got in the car. Like, I'm trying to transition. And then I'm like, okay, can you guys talk one at a time so I can really hear what each one has to say? Because sometimes one gets in the car and then they blabber, blah, 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 blah. And then the one's like, well, you didn't let me talk. I'm like, guys, we have to all, like, we all have time in the world to talk. Like, everybody can have their turn, you know?
That's funny because my kids, it's always like, how was your day? Fine. What did you do? Nothing. Like it's just like one, I'm like, what? I'm trying to get them to talk to me, and they're
Well, that's
like,
what I do
"Fine,
though. Like I focus
no."
sometimes on my oldest, like because he's really quiet and he doesn't want to tell me anything. So I'm like, can you please share like what you learned today? Nothing. What'd you do today? Nothing. What'd you eat? And then he tells me what he eats, but then that's about it. And I'm like, no, like what'd you like most about your day? Like how much fun did you have? You know? And then I start getting him, and then my other one that talks all the time, he's like, blah 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 blah. I'm like, hold on, it's not your turn yet. Hold on. And he's like, well, he doesn't want to tell you, I'll tell you.
Yeah, every kid's so different. It's so different. So I know we want to do like a quick little this or that. So strict routine or go with the flow parenting.
I think go with the flow.
I think I'm strict routine. But I think it's because I'm such a like routine girly. For me, that's what I thrive on. I need a routine. I need it to be on my calendar and I need to know what time. So yeah, no, I'm very like, okay, we're gonna get home and you're gonna do your dusting because they each have their little
Yes.
chores. You're gonna do your dusting, you're gonna do your homework, we're gonna take a shower, then we're gonna have dinner. Like it's all planned out.
Well, I love that. I mean, I tried it, but my oldest is just like he doesn't like. I mean, he likes structure, but he likes free time. So when he comes home, he wants to do free time. I'm like, no, honey, we do homework. So they'll be nagging him to do his homework, to do this, to do that, and I'm like, why do you have to make it 10 times harder? Like, if you just were to get home and do it, like we wouldn't have a problem. But
Then we
don't.
can, yeah, and then we could be like, go with, then
We
we
can
can
have
relax the
fun.
rest of the evening. Yeah.
And he's just like, why? But why? Why do you have to make me do this? And I'm like, I'm also thinking like it's the stage where he's at now. Like he's hitting puberty and it's just not fun.
Yeah. What about because I said so, or let's talk about it?
I think a little bit of both.
Mm, same.
Because sometimes when they want to push my buttons, I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. But then they don't really care. And they're like, I still want to do X. Like, I'm gonna go ask my dad. I'm like, no, we're not. Like, I said so, and this is what's gonna be. Like, it's just a little mix in between the both, I guess.
I'd like to be more of like, let's talk about it, but sometimes I'm like, I mean, I don't necessarily say because I said so. I would just be like, no, I already said no,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
But it's good. I think when I think about it, it is good for them to kind of question authority a little
Yeah.
bit,
Mhm.
And so like I want to be more of like, okay, let's talk about it. So that's one of the other things that I'm going to be working on.
Okay.
Family game night or movie night.
I think we do both. Like, mostly they go for movie night, but because they want to unwind and watch something in my bed with all of us. I like game night too. Like, whenever we can, we put it in the schedule.
We do more movie nights, I think. I think it's also because, there's such a big age gap between both of my kids that it's hard for us to kind of all agree on an activity or a game that we all want to do collectively. So it's just easier to be like, okay, let's watch a movie, let's make popcorn, let's
Yeah.
watch a movie.
Yeah, I think that's true. Do you guys do loteria?
No,
Yeah, I love loteria with my kids
you
too.
love that.
Yeah.
My kids like the only thing they do like to play is dominoes. They
Okay.
love to play dominoes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's what
good.
they always want to do. Or what is it? The like card like 20, not
You won?
Uno. 21, yeah.
Yeah.
They like to play that as well. Yeah. Or Uno. They like to, Uno too. But mostly it's just movies. What about bedtime cuddles or a high five goodnight?
I like bedtime cuddles. My husband would high five.
We're big huggers, so we
Yeah.
always we definitely hug and cuddle. And I have to tell my husband to do it more
Yeah.
because I saw something where like they're saying how it's, kids really benefit from like a full hug
Yeah.
rather than like a side hug. Like I'm a full hug kind of a mom,
Yeah.
but my husband is more of like the side one. So I have to tell him like, dude, like no, it's important. I read about that. It's
Yeah.
important, especially for boys, like young boys with our son. Like it's really important for you to give your son like a full on hug and for him to feel like that love from you.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. My boys are always like hugging my husband, and then he's like one of the people like he's not a touchy person, and I'm like, oh my God, like I don't know what kind of life you lived, but in my household we were all up on everybody, like hugging everyone. And I did notice that when he came from Mexico, and my uncles were always hugging like us and me, and like it wasn't distinguished like girl or boy, like they would hug
Mhm.
everybody, and then
Mhm.
he'd be like, why are they so lovey-dovey? I'm like, yeah, I don't know, my family's just like that, like totally different.
My family is the same way. Yeah, we're very lovey-dovey. So let your kids pick their outfits or choose for them.
I do a little bit of both. When it's school time, I'm just like, I got your outfits picked out because we're not doing this in the morning.
Yeah, same. I mean, of course, not with my daughter. I can't even buy her an outfit anymore. She has to buy all her own clothes.
Yeah.
But with my son, yeah, I leave everything out the day before because we don't have time in the morning. He gets
Yep.
up late. It's like
Same.
go, go, go.
hmm
Instant noodles or homemade dinner on a busy day?
Either homemade or takeout. I don't do instant noodles. We try to stay away from carbs.
Like a cup of noodles?
Yeah,
You don't
I
do cup of
I I
noodles,
stay
sopa
away.
maruchan?
No, I don't. My kids love it. When we go to Mexico, we do it, but it's very rare and there because we all have diabetes in the family, so it's like I try to stay away.
Okay. Yeah, no, we do sopa maruchan too. It's more when we go to Mexico. You're right. That's like yeah. We do it often when we go to in Mexico too. My kids I don't really like cup of noodles, so I don't really eat them for myself, but my kids will eat them. But no, yeah, definitely. Um, I cook more than eat out, so maybe I'll say um homemade dinner. But I mean, if it's a really, really busy day, then I'll probably, grab like pizza or something. But
Yeah,
usually I cook. Dance party in the living room or outdoor adventure?
the both. We do more outdoor adventures, but like if it's raining out, then we do indoor parties.
Yeah, no, we're more of an outdoor adventure kind of a family. I don't like to be home on the weekends.
I mean, sometimes that's what I was thinking about the other day. I'm like, we never have wind down time. Like we don't have time to be home. And I'm like, I should just start carving that out and like we're gonna be home by like 3 p.m. on Sunday and we can chill, watch movies, do something and wind down because sometimes the weeks are so heavy.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm like home all the time, but on the weekend I don't. Like the minute it's Friday, when I tell you that me and my kids have like dance parties in the car after school, we have dance parties because we're
Yeah.
so excited that it's Friday.
Yes, there's something
We're
about
like,
Fridays.
yeah, we want to go out and do things, and we're always like, best day ever, it's Friday, so it's like we know we get to get out and do stuff. So we're like never home. So definitely outdoor adventure. That was it.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we did that segment. I think it gives us a little bit twist of the seriousness.
So, as usual, we always encourage you guys to please reach out, message us, DM, email. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to know what kind of content you want more of, or maybe even less of. Do you guys like it when we have guests, or do you like it better when it's just Eva and I? And what topics would you guys like to see? We would really, really appreciate any feedback that you guys have. As long as you're nice, please be nice.
Yes, thank you for tuning in, and we hope to see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.